Everyone settle down, settle down. Class is in session. That's right, my name is Jack, Mr. The Jobber from Cultaholic.com. And it's time to look at this week's Monday Night Raw, which was from Albany, New York. That's right, wrestling. It's an Albany expression from that Simpsons reference with the fried hams, the steamed hams, the fried hams. I've shown myself up there to be a very poor, basic level Simpsons fan there. Oh, good Lord. But that's enough of that. Let's just talk about all of the wrestling and all of the sports entertainment that went on from Albany, New York on this week's Monday Night Raw. I'm going to warn you, we're going to look at one of the worst segments we've seen in the history of Graded. I know it's a short history of Graded, but I don't think it'll be topped for quite some time. And if you've seen Raw, you'll know which one I'm talking about. Let's get on with it. This is Graded. So we kick things off with the Raw General Manager, Kurt Angle. He's coming out to hype the crowd. Yay! Kurt's here! He's saying, you know, we've got a big contract signing. Nia Jax is going to square off against Ronda Rousey. They're going to lock eyes. They're going to sign a contract. Stephanie McMahon's music hits and she comes out. No selling the arm, going, the arm's fine. It's all fine. Gets in the ring. Kurt, don't worry about WrestleMania, mate. Water under the bridge. It's all fine. I don't care that I lost to Ronda. What are you doing? So yes, it's as if WrestleMania 34 never happened in the mind of Stephanie McMahon, which is obviously, you can look at it two ways. You can look at it as a way to get heel heat on her for being such an oblivious, cocky, egotistical heel. Or on the other hand, you can look at it as her really cheapening Ronda's win. And I find it hard to separate those two things in my mind. I really find it hard to pick between them, but I'm going to just plow on for now. There were several other things in this segment that I didn't particularly enjoy. Stephanie mentioned Roman Reigns once at one point, just name dropped him a little bit, didn't really call him out or anything. Roman's music hit and he came out like he was waiting for someone to call him out. He got a bit annoyed by various people in this segment, if you can't already tell. I'm jittering. Roman came out and got in the ring. The big dog is here. Hooray. Obviously everyone. That was a mixed reception. A lot of boos. New York crowds tend to be a bit more smarky than others, particularly those in New York City, but I guess in upstate New York as well. And Roman was, you know, heavily booed. He whined and complained and said, no, Stephanie, you don't want me anywhere near that Universal title or anywhere near the Money in the Bank briefcase. Mate, maybe you shouldn't lose every week. Have you watched professional wrestling? People get screwed out of wins all the time. You've been in several title matches recently and you've been screwed out of them, but at the same time, you also lost clean at WrestleMania. Why do you keep on No, I can feel myself getting annoyed. My volume was starting to rise and I just need to calm a Roode down. Then Kevin Owens came out to defend Stephanie McMahon, which I 100% agree with, because why is Roman Reigns having a go at Stephanie for not giving him any opportunities since WrestleMania? She's been gone for the majority of the time, recovering from Ronda Rousey's attack. Why have you blamed Steph for this, Roman? I don't understand why it's her fault at all. This is quite lazy writing, I fear. And then to make things worse, if I wasn't already frustrated enough with this segment, Kevin Owens then was like, me and Steph, we're best heel friends. Oh yeah. And did like a boy band lean on her shoulder. And she went, never touch me. I'm Stephanie McMahon, which I found, it's the classic Stephanie McMahon thing, isn't it? It's the classic thing she gets criticised for. She doesn't just bury the heels, the baby faces, and make them look stupid. She buries the heels as well, even though they're supposed to be on her side. This segment gets an E+. There were a lot of things that I didn't like here. Everyone performed it quite well, you know, there was no bad acting per se in the segment, but there were a lot of things I had big issues with. I had issues with Stephanie no-selling the WrestleMania loss. I had issues with Roman Reigns having an illogical argument for his mistreatment at the hands of management, particularly Stephanie, who wasn't even there for the past few weeks. And I have a major issue with Stephanie cutting the balls off Kevin Owens. E+. God damn it. This set up the first match of the evening in what was a pretty decent match, to be fair. Kevin Owens versus Roman Reigns. And watching this match, you can kind of sort of tell that Kevin Owens is really hitting his stride. He's in form, you know what I mean? When a wrestler seems to be, you know, nailing not only all of their own spots, but nailing every cell as well. He was moving really well. He was throwing everything with vigor. He was reacting to everything appropriately. He looked really, really good, in short. Despite this, the match was a little bit frustrating because it got cut off a little bit too soon at the end. I understand why, you know, they wanted to move things forward throughout the show, as we'll see in a second. Jinder Mahal came out and blindsided Roman Reigns when he was just beginning to dominate the match, causing a DQ. Roman won by DQ, and it set up a big, juicy Teddy Long tag match. Holla, 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 holla. player. This gets a B from me, a straight B, because it was actually a pretty decent match. We know that Owens and Reigns have pretty good chemistry, especially when Owens is healing it up over Reigns and mocking him and stuff like that. Yeah, they've got good chemistry. Owens was especially on form, which I think knocks it up to like a straight B rather than a B minus maybe. And the ending was a bit frustrating, but as we'll see, it all made sense in the end. No major issues here, solid B. I must point out though that despite this, Roman versus Jinder is not the feud that I want to see. It's not going to set my summer 2018 alight, boys, I'm sorry. This led to a tag match between Roman Reigns and Rollins, who ran out to save him, and the heel team of Kevin Owens and Jinder Mahal. And a bloody good match it was as well. It was actually pretty damn good. In years gone by, we'd obviously picture this match as Seth being the face in peril, getting beaten down, getting the hot tag to Roman, who'd come in and hit 57 spears on everyone and pick up the really clean victory. But no, that's not how things went down at all. There was a long heat segment on Roman Reigns, and even though long heat segments, unless they're done by the Revival, can often be pretty boring and draining for a live crowd, unless again they're done by the Revival, who are excellent. No, it was actually pretty entertaining, just because we rarely see Roman in this position in a standard tag match on Raw. Eventually he got the hot tag to Seth, who came in, cleared house for a little bit. Then Jinder got the upper hand a little bit, so Roman came in to just take him out as his rival. And then it was Seth versus Owens, and Seth went for the curb stomp, or the blackout, or the stomp, or whatever we're calling it. Owens moved out of the way. Seth just sort of did a little hippity hop, hopped in the air, hopped in space. I'm really struggling to finish this point. He hopped in space to the next bit of the ring, and then stomped Kevin Owens. B+ for this match. Really enjoyable stuff, and a good win for Seth Rollins. He is on fire. He is on form and continues to be an excellent Intercontinental champion. Hopped in space. I should mention, of course, before we move on to the next segment, that Jinder Mahal attacked both men with a chair afterwards to get his heat back. The commentators sold this like it was the worst thing in the world, but honestly, quite honestly, I thought it was totally justified, given what Roman Reigns did to him last week when he speared him through a wall after previously injuring his ribs earlier in the show. But you know, each to their own. Next up, we've got to talk about it. It's time. It's time for the Sami Zayn, Bobby Lashley sisters segment, which is one of the worst. It's going to be remembered as, it's one of the segments that's going to be remembered as one of the worst ones in Raw history, in terms of like when people will say, oh god, do you remember this segment? Do you remember the old day? Do you remember the K-Vic? It's even maybe on that. Do you remember this? Do you remember that? Do you remember this? Do you remember Donald Trump versus Rosie O'Donnell? Do you remember Sami Zayn bringing out Bobby Lashley's sisters? And everyone will go, oh, why did you remind me of that? What year did that happen in? Was it 2005? It was in 2018, are you joking? Now excuse me if I need to use my notes for this one, because it was just so unbelievable, I'm not quite certain. It's all a bit of a blur in my mind, and I need to clarify that it actually happened in real life. So, Sami Zayn hit the ring. He brought out Bobby Lashley's sisters, who were 3 men dressed in women's clothing, haha, hilarious, in 2018. Sami Zayn interviewed each sister in turn, and they all exposed Bobby Lashley as a liar and a hypocrite and a bully in their childhood. Bobby Lashley came out smiling and slapping hands with the crowd, totally no-selling the segment, and proceeded to beat up all of the men. Sami Zayn left the ring and mocked him from the ramp. That was the segment in a nutshell, but let me go into why it was particularly bad. Right, first of all, let's just get this out of the way. Needless to say, this was horribly offensive to the trans community. Even if this segment did not involve anything offensive at all, it was still woefully done. One thing that I really didn't understand was Sami Zayn's very real, honest, righteous anger at Bobby Lashley's fake sisters and what they were telling him. Like, Lashley would come out and Sami Zayn would say, these women have exposed you. Like, did Sami not hire these men to portray Bobby Lashley's sisters? Is he not aware that this isn't real? Like, does he believe what's going on here? Does he believe that these 3 people are actually Bobby Lashley's sisters? I didn't understand the tone they were going for. I didn't understand the point of it. I was infuriated at Lashley for coming out and no-selling it and smiling and laughing, because at the very least, if you're going to do a segment this tasteless and this stupid, you at least want to have the babyface riled up by it and angered by it. But even he didn't care. Even Lashley was like, you know what, this is stupid. What are we meant to think as an audience? What the... I'm getting too angry. I'm starting to... This is what's wrong with Cornette. This is why he's so angry all the time. I'm starting to turn into Brian Alvarez. I'm giving this an F. The first F that I've awarded on Graded, and maybe the first F of Graded in its entirety. I don't know if Pacitti has. I don't think he has yet. But this is fully deserving of an F. What was going on? Get out of my classroom, this segment. Go on. Go and see the head teacher. Jeez. Next up, we all tried to recover and watched Ember Moon versus Alexa Bliss, which was actually a decent match, but a very short one. Ember Moon was on form. She sold an attack on the outside really well, spiking her own head into the barricade, but it doesn't matter because we've just watched Sami Zayn break out 3 men dressed as Bobby Lashley's sisters, and I can't get over it. Ember Moon beat Alexa Bliss and has established herself as a very real contender for the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match. Bobby Lashley's sisters, just men in drag. Then Alexa, was really cross and Ember picked up the win. I'm giving this a B-. It was a good match, could have been a bit longer, but nothing wrong here. Bobby Lashley's sisters. Oh my god. Then we headed backstage to where Stephanie McMahon had just taken Kurt Angle's office from him, just to squash him down a little bit further, just to reinforce the fact that WrestleMania 34 victory meant absolutely sweet FA. Then Strowman and Finn Balor came in. Finn was smiling, as he always does. And then, I like this, to be fair. This was too short a segment to actually grade, I think, but I enjoyed the part where Braun Strowman crushed an apple in his hand and it wiped the smile off Finn Balor's face. This set up the main event between Balor and Strowman, and we'll talk about that in due course. On to the next segment, please. Thank you. Next up, No Way Jose versus Baron Corbin, the first of quite a few matches on Raw that I didn't really have any interest in seeing because I thought they were feuds that had already reached their natural conclusion or just hadn't captured the crowd, and I thought the feuds had been kind of abandoned before too long. But no, several of these matches actually happened in the second half of Raw, towards the last stages of Raw. This was the first, No Way Jose versus Baron Corbin. I'm giving it a D, which I feel harsh for because mechanically the match was absolutely fine, but the crowd were dead for it and it just wasn't what I wanted to see at all. Baron Corbin won pretty clean. It was effectively a squash. It was another short, fairly pointless match, and Corbin just kind of squashed No Way Jose, who, remember, is a recent NXT call-up. I get that they want to make Baron Corbin look strong and keep him strong, but at the same time, why did they go back to this match? Why didn't they have him beat a different opponent? None of this really added up for me in my head. So yeah, I'm giving it a D, which may sound a little bit harsh, but were you excited by this turn of events? Really? Let me know in the comments down below. I got so cocky there. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this match, player. No. Yeah, it just wasn't very good, lads. Then we went backstage where Kurt Angle was talking to Chad Gable, and Gable went, "Kurt, why is your office taken over by Stephanie?" And Kurt went, I just like a divorced dad, I just gave Stephanie the office for tonight, son. He's not his son, but that's Jason Jordan. Then Ziggler and McIntyre came along, bragging about their success, wanting more from Kurt Angle. Then they ran down Gable a little bit, and then Kurt set up Ziggler versus Gable for later on in the night. And we're into the B Team versus the Fashion Police, the match I've been waiting for since last week. In fairness, this wasn't as good as last week's victory, which was monumental, of course, but it was still very exciting indeed. A few little things wrong with it that I'm going to point out. Basically, I didn't understand why the B Team had the same opponents. I wanted them to have beaten the Fashion Police and move on to someone else, maybe the Ascension, maybe someone a little bit tougher and more brawny. But it's not the deepest tag division, I guess, in the world. They couldn't have beat the Authors of Pain, for example, not yet. But they did a really good job in the sort of minute or two they were allocated. That was another point wrong with this match. They squashed the Fashion Police. And as excited as I am for Axel and Dallas on one hand, I'm disappointed for Breezango on the other hand as well, because Breezango are naturally hilarious and fantastically charismatic wrestlers, as I botched the word charismatic. But then again, this was all made up for. This was heading for like a C- or so, because it really was about a minute-long squash over a team that I like. But it was saved and made into a C+ by the celebrations, maybe a B-. No, a C+. It was only a minute long, but a C+ for Axel and Dallas because of their celebrations. They were swimming on the announce desk, hugging Corey Graves. They got in an office chair and pushed it and wheeled it down the ramp while hugging, and somehow didn't break their necks like I would have. It was hilarious. And I just want them to move on to a different team next, please. So C+, good stuff, room for improvement. Let's carry it on. Let's see what they can do next week. Next up, please hold your applause because it's time for Steph TV. That's right, with The Miz gone to SmackDown, it looks like Steph's got the newest talk show segment on Raw. No, she doesn't. This was the contract signing between Ronda and Nia, but it was a bit weird, wasn't it, guys? Like, essentially, Steph came down, and then Nia came down looking all powerful, but at the same time, smiling, because she is a babyface champion at the end of the day. Then Ronda came down slapping hands, and at this point, by the way, this is a little aside, I noticed that there was something wrong with the walkway, because earlier, Bobby Lashley had also been slapping hands, and both he and Ronda had to be like hunched over and like in pain, like, yeah, kids, slapping their hands. It was really weird. And I just assumed that it was because Bobby Lashley's like a weird dude, but then Ronda was doing it, and I thought, oh, there's just a dodgy angle. They've just got to navigate a bit of a strange angle. I just thought Lashley was like really weird. Yes, anyway, then they got into the ring and Steph did the Miz TV thing of basically, you know, when he's got two baby faces on the show and just cuts a promo on behalf of both of them and tries to wind the other one up, and he'll get behind one of them and go, maybe you're not very good at wrestling. And then he goes behind the other one and goes, maybe you're a bitch-ass punk. And then they're like, whoa! And then they brawl, but they brawl them against the Miz because they're not stupid. Well, this was kind of similar. Steph was cutting a promo on behalf of both women, so she would go behind Nia and go, maybe Ronda jumped the queue, even though Nia challenged Ronda. Then she'd go behind Ronda and go, maybe Nia's lazy because it took her so long to become champion despite her natural gifts and talent for wrestling. And everyone was like, whoa! And then nothing happened. Sort of, they squared off, had a very intense stare down. Ronda promised she was going to take her title and her arm away from her. And that was it. It was a very strange vibe. I'm giving it a C- because it wasn't too bad, but I was just confused by it. It was a bit too much Stephanie on this show for my liking as well, but I was mainly just confused. She did a good job, Steph, to be fair to her, but I didn't agree with the job that she was assigned. So I'd have liked to have seen Ronda and Nia given a little bit more mic time. I know they're not the best on the mic, either of them, but the only way they're going to get better is if you give them time, especially Ronda being so new. But there was nothing offensive, so pretty much average, a little bit towards the negative side. And that's why it's called a C-. Next up, Chad Gable versus Dolph Ziggler, that match that I mentioned just before that was set up by Kurt Angle. Oh, it wasn't given enough time. I'd have liked other things on the show to have been removed, such as the Bobby Lashley segment with his sisters and Sami Zayn, to give more room to this match, because I'm a big fan of Ziggler and Gable, especially in the ring. In the ring, they're two of the best in-ring workers in WWE, you know what I mean? This should have been given more than about 3 or 4 minutes, but as such, it was just given that amount of time. Ziggler won with a super kick. Ziggler and McIntyre are still big, strong baddies. Get to see, just to see that they didn't have enough time to do anything better, just to see. Next up, a women's Money in the Bank qualifying match between Natalya, Dana Brooke, Liv Morgan and Sarah Logan, the latter two, of course, representing the Riot Squad. I understood the dynamic of this match, the two heels and the two baby faces who kind of want to, you know, every woman for themselves, whereas the two heels are being sneaky and teaming up with each other. But the match, wasn't very good, was it, lads? It wasn't brilliant. It was a very slow match and it was a bit sloppy, and it picked up towards the end, and I enjoyed the last final little sequence, but it was a slog to get there. Natalya picks up the victory with the sharpshooter, and it was okay. I didn't enjoy it. I was burnt out by this point, but at the same time, I genuinely think it was quite a sloppy match as well, which I feel harsh saying because I enjoy Natalya and I really like how she brings a certain air of technical class and expertise to the women's division, one which sadly wasn't really on display here. But she won the match. She cut a promo afterwards about her best friend Ronda Rousey. That's really weird, unless she's going to win and cash in on Ronda if she beats Nia. Is that going to happen? I don't know. In my heart of hearts, I think Becky Lynch is going to win the briefcase, but I think that Becky Lynch is going to win every time, and she never does. So this gets a D-. I didn't enjoy the match at all, but the ending was okay. The ending was all right. Next up, the penultimate match of the night, Elias versus Bobby Roode. Like No Way Jose versus Baron Corbin, and like the B-Team versus Breezango, this feud's probably gone on a bit longer than it naturally should have. In fairness, though, this was a pretty intense match from two men who you'd think everyone would be sick of watching wrestle. Elias and Bobby Roode. They both did really well, especially Elias. The crowd were well behind him. Obviously, he's a heel and they should have been cheering for Roode, but we'll let that go because everyone wants Roode to turn heel so much. I think it was all right. I didn't agree with the match being on the show because I'm sick of it. It's becoming the Randy Orton versus Sheamus of this generation, but at the same time, it was actually a better match than I thought it was going to be. C+. So the wrestling was okay, the booking was bad. We'll meet in the middle with a C and then give it a plus for the effort as well. And because Elias won and he needed that victory, so well done, C+. And finally, the main event, Braun Strowman versus Finn Balor. This was a very exciting main event. First of all, we had another one of those little interactions. Remember last week when I laughed so much at Sami Zayn giving the old lady to Alexa Bliss, and then she was like, oh, go away. But, I've got a personal anecdote. Have I got time? Yeah, I do, right. I went out at the weekend and I was out with my mates, and this guy came over and was like, do you want me to take a picture of you guys? And I was like, oh no, it's cool, I've got it. And just took a selfie of me and my two mates myself. And he was like, you know what, let me get in the picture as well, because I just love making friends on a night out. You know when you meet someone with a very false charisma and you're like, this dude's a bit weird? He got in the picture with us, so we took a picture with him, we were like, wait. And then he walked off past this rather attractive girl and went, you're hot and you know it. And she went, right. And I was reminded of Sami Zayn and Alexa Bliss so much. That's my little story. You're hot and you know it, right? Right, let's get back on track. I'm very sorry about that. But, you know, everyone loved, you know, in lessons at school when the teacher would give a personal anecdote, wouldn't they? Maybe not about the weekend when he was out on the lash. But, yes, Bobby Lashley. Braun Strowman, I've totally lost track, not Bobby Lashley. Braun Strowman versus Finn Balor. On the way out, Strowman boshed Elias down to the floor because Elias was still on the way out from the last match. Another of those little interactions. It all links in. You see where I was going with that. Anyway, the main event was a good one. Really good stuff. A- I'm giving it because not only did Braun Strowman look like a beast because he won and beat an experienced and respected wrestler in Finn Balor, but Balor also looked like a beast for hanging in there so long with such a massive, destructive, on-form wrestler like Braun Strowman. I have zero complaints with this match as a main event. It was the best match on the show, I think. Yeah, probably was. And yeah, A-. No complaints with this match at all. So, what do I give the show overall? Well, this could have been a very badly ranked or graded show. Like, genuinely, the opening segment I've had various issues with. The Sami Zayn and Bobby Lashley thing was offensive and bad. And there was a string of tiresome sort of matches towards the end, feuds that really should have ended or been freshened up by now, I guess. But the show was saved by the good performances of guys like Balor, Strowman, Roman, Rollins, and Kevin Owens. So it wasn't too bad, and the main event was the best match on the show, which I really enjoy that. It always gets a little boost for me in my mind if I think the show ended on a high. That's really good structuring. So I'm giving it a D, but it could easily have been a disaster. It could have been way down the lower end of the spectrum, but I'm going a straight D, not a D plus or a D minus, just a D, and it's the worst Raw so far, but it could have been so much worse. So, you know, let's just take what we can from that. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. Thank you very much for attending this class, graded, Raw graded. You can follow me on Twitter at Jack the Jobber. You can follow all of us at Cultaholic. Check out Patreon as well if you want, patreon.com/Cultaholic. And never forget, of course, to do your homework, but also to join us.